had a place across the bay, some farmland, and some very unpleasant characters. The family's still by name over there. They wanted that land that my relatives had, so they it's hard to say, but they murdered him. Okay. Yeah, and they they put the bodies out in the cow path, and like that, the cows are walking through the bodies start to come up. Well, anyways, some vigilantes over knew who they were, and they not some vigilantes, but the police, and they got them, several of them, and they put them in a jail right there. And that jail is, you can see it when you drive in South Bend, Raymond, South Bend. It's on the edge of the road in South Bend. They still have it on display. Next to that steam donkey over there, is that South Bend? I think. Yeah, South Bend. South Bend. Yeah, that jail is still there. Anyways, that jail was right there. And they put two of those guys in there. And some vigilantes rode across the bay, and they came over here, and they gave a bottle of whiskey to the jailer and get him to leave. And they wanted to get these two guys, but they couldn't because they're inside the jail. So what they did is they shot in the jail and ricocheted the bullets around and got them that way. Right there. And then the courthouse here, people over in South Bend really felt the courthouse would be over there because this was the major town. This actually eventually had a university right here, right there. But another set of vigilantes came over here and they stole the papers out of the courthouse and took them over to South Bend, so that's why it's over there now. And then the courthouse burned down or something happened to it, and they put this is like the first college in the university in Washington State. I think it's right there. And there you got it, trees. Okay? Yeah.
Nature wins. Longest history of the area.
All right. So lots of places to spread around to paint here. And where I will paint this afternoon, I am not too sure. But if you come back here at 1:30, either I will be here to tell you where I'm going, or I'll have somebody here to tell you that I'm down the path, or I'm over there. But most likely it'll be close by, okay?
How far is the cannery?
Probably a quarter of a mile. It's within walking distance, if you don't have too much encounters. So you can drive over there. Just go down the road that way and out. Some beautiful bay views out there. So, So I used to play around here when I was a kid, growing up, and gosh, I never thought in so many years I would be doing this right here. You know? I was gonna go out and conquer the world. Had all sorts of plans, but anyways, move away from home now. I'm not even I'm living on my grandma's property, so I'm not even moved away from it. Okay, so it's fine. I saw this last year. I thought I like the pattern of the way these branches come down here, and then through this you have a neat kind of a neat tree. Now you know what? You might say, well, gosh, I wish I could have seen that, Eric. This may not appeal to you. You may not catch your eye. The reference photos, one set of reference photos that I've never used is when I followed around a well-known, really quite a famous artist, oil painter, named Richard Schmid, and he came down here and we had some fun going over to Astoria and getting painting ideas. And I'd watch out of the corner of my eye, taking some photo references, getting ideas, and then I'd work my way over and I'd say, this is going to be the painting. None of those meant anything to me. So I never used them. You have to kind of find your own things that interest you. Okay, so there's my big shapes. Let's see. Okay, so you guys know how far we've driven now from where we were yesterday to up here. It's a little bit of a distance. Remember I told you the story about my great-grandfather rowing the length of the bay?
Yeah.
That's still further up that ways quite a bit.
Yeah.
This guy was tough, and he was, I've seen pictures of him, and I know that he could have stood underneath my arm.
Huh.
And I asked my dad once, I said, how come his great-grandpa's such a short guy? Well, he said, well, he left Denmark at the age of 13 to get on this guano sailing ships. That's another tough deal. And he did it because they wanted food, and he would get fed that way. So, and he was the top tonger in the bay one year. Now back then they were native oysters that they don't have anymore, and they would use tongs. Tongs to they'd stand on a flat boat and use tongs to pull them up that way. In fact, Tucker right over here's got I think a set of tongs that came from our old cannery. And he was the top tonger in the bay that year. I can't remember how many thousand bushels he tonged.
Wow.
And it's kind of amazing how tough those guys were. Okay, so darks, midtones. Okay, are we going to have a spot where we can put some lights in? You don't have to always. This is kind of neat. I've got some lights happening up in here. Maybe we could work those in a couple spots. Sometimes a painting, I just won't have any lights. You don't have to have them, but a lot of times paintings will suffer if you don't get those lights going. But I do kind of want it to look like it's in shadow here. Might work a light. What if we work a light right in there in that road? Okay, so sometimes we get a little bit overly concerned about perspective. I know that this is not drawn exactly right to the road, but I don't care. It just kind of gives you the idea. And you can measure it, and you can measure it by putting your pencil out and seeing how, put your pencil out horizontally, you can see the angle that goes down. Not too far off. You can measure that, but that stuff is not all that important. Okay, now I really don't have many lights. So we just basically have a 2-value painting. Midtones, and some darks. I got a little bit of light over here. A little bit of light we can put in there. Too. So maybe we can work a few lights in. So it's a little bit contrary to what I've said to a lot of my students in my Zoom class, which is don't lose your lights. They are your ace to your painting. Well, sometimes if you're doing a fairly dark scene, you may not have that many lights. But you can still have a more subdued dark painting without all lights. But let's see where the painting goes. I feel comfortable enough with what we've got going on here to at least get me started.
Sorry.
But I'll work some lights in from here. I think that's what I'll do. And my intention is on these two figures that are walking here. Kind of bring them together. This painting we're going to be using animation. Yeah, we'll work in some lights up here. Okay. All right, then tonight, okay, so then after we'll have critique at 3:30, you know, wherever we're at, okay? Most likely we'll be here, but if I end up doing the demonstration in another place, I'll tell you then where the critique will be. It'll either be there or it'll be back here. Okay. Squeeze out some fresh color. Sometimes I've limited my colors down to just the warm and the cool of each primary and dropped out the earth colors. That's one way of helping to keep your paintings from getting muddy. Earth colors can be very beautiful, but they are a graying color and they're not so intense. And if you overmix them slightly with some of your other colors, you could end up with a little more of a muddy mixture. So let's do that this time. Let's not put out these earth colors, and we'll stay with these primary colors. This is what the Impressionists, I think, did. Basically a warm and a cool. So back in art school, my instructor, the first Wednesday of the month, no matter how many years you've been in the class, do a one-color painting. And the second Wednesday was a two-color, third was a three-color, the fourth Wednesday was a four-color. And it's very, very helpful because it just kept pushing the idea that it's not the colors you choose, it's the getting your values and shapes right. And my last year of school, I asked him if I could kind of skip that exercise because after all, I was an upperclassman. He didn't even want to talk about it. He just said, no, I think we ought to keep doing it. And I am so glad because it just kept drilling into me. What's your values?
Was it a different subject each time, or the same?
Oh, whatever subject you wanted to pick.
No, you didn't have to do all four.
No. We could have did the same subject for each painting. We could have, but no, he didn't care. You know, one thing that kind of goes off into another question though too, and that is it a good idea to continue doing a painting, the same subject over and over? And it only is if you find it interesting to do. But it's not, don't do it once you lose the interest in it, just for the sake of exercise. I went to the Art Institute, and somehow, I can't remember exactly how it was. Maybe I came back, and I saw a painting there, and came back, and I saw it, and then I saw it reproduced in a book. And I'd heard that traditional oil painters were to set up in the Louvre and to copy those paintings. That way you learn from that artist that did the painting, the master. That didn't do anything for me. And that wasn't part of our schooling, to go and copy the masters. I'm glad it wasn't because I didn't get anything out of it. All I kind of thought was, well, I'm just trying to figure out what the way this guy was thinking. I was more interested in what I was trying to figure out. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to take my number 5 mop, and I'm going to start to draw some of these shapes here. just to relax a little bit. So even though this is not red, it's still quite an aggressive statement to make right off the bat.
Is that cerulean?
I think it's cobalt and cerulean. Yeah. So back in art school, we had worked with a figure for 2 years and then the model for another year, so a clothes model. So we did a lot of figure work, which was really good. But I used to love life drawing for 20 minutes because we had the quick poses. I just was fascinated with the gesture and the power of the gesture and what could be done with that. And everybody looked at it as a warming up exercise, but to me that was where it was at. But the class was 3 hours long, so the next 2.5 hours I kind of suffered with the long pose. And little did I realize that was the beginning. My painting personality was starting to come through then. I had no idea. And that's kind of part of the reason I gravitated towards watercolor painting, is that I love the gesture, the power of the gesture. And you can see that happening right here. Now, whether you choose a blue line to draw with or a red line to start out with, that doesn't matter. It all boils down to kindergarten. What's your favorite color, okay? It's important to just relax your mind into your painting. Try not to become self-conscious. Try not to, I mentioned it yesterday, try not to, the degree that you are going to be inhibited in your painting is let's see, what do I forget? Well, I'm just trying to go blank.
The degree to which you are inhibited is the degree to which you're limited in your painting.
You know, that's very well said. Thank you.
Bill's a smart guy.
Brilliant.
Get that guy's name so we can send him an A. Yeah.
Is that one on your scroll of
It
Ericisms?
is. Yes, I was just starting to draw a blank there. Okay, so now I am. I'm going to come in and start to do this tree, but I'm going to have some fun here. The degree that you're worried about your painting is the degree that you're going to be inhibited. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to also use now another principle of nature, and that is that color tends to lie on the outside edge of a shape, the vibration of color. If you're into optics and all that kind of thing, that's where the color lies. So I'm going to use that principle here. We're using red on the outside edge. But you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to use that, but this is what I'm going to use here. The main thing is I want to get at a value shift from here to here to here. Okay? I could have, if I had done this painting 30 seconds later, I might have said, let's do a dark yellow here or something else. But it's just what came to mind at that moment. And you notice on this particular painting that I'm not doing what we call a lot of glazing. I'm putting my darks in right on the white of the paper. Every painting, sometimes I do glazing and layers. But in this particular case, I'm thinking I want to get the darks right on the white of the paper because they'll tend to be a little more intense in color. You know, it just makes sense. The more layers you have, the less you're going to have less intense color. Okay, so that's a pretty outrageous statement. Cobalt blue tree. But I like that, so. We can throw a little red in there just to keep it going with the rest of the thing here. So your value study is not, sometimes people are a little confused on this, is not a blueprint. It's a guide. And if you see something better in your painting developing that you would like to do, then you do it. Just take a step away from it. This is only to get you up into the painting process. Now, this is also a good example of where I mentioned to the students, especially in the Zoom class, allow your colors to run into each other. That's now we're drawing on another principle of nature, and that is that colors tend to reflect into each other. I'm going to drop a little more blue here, just to stress that point. Okay? And the yellow, green, can run up into here a little bit if we want to do that. Okay? These colors running back and forth into each other helps several ways. It gives me a soft edge. I can come back in with a harder edge later. It gives me some beautiful neutral colors here to work with, soft edges. It also makes the painting tend to look a little more realistic because colors bounce back and forth into each other, especially objects that are close to each other. So try not to paint object by object. If you know it's going to be a dark and it's going to run into a midtone, let them run into each other. It'll harmonize the painting. So I watch my values, but I can have a lot of fun with color, okay? So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and sometimes if you overthink, now this is for those of you who've been painting for a while, if you overthink on every stroke, it can hurt your painting. Just look at what's happening and kind of have fun with it. And after a while, you'll start to feel the patterns and you'll start to feel the relationships. And you don't have to answer every question. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? It just seemed right at the time. And it reminds me of the movie that came out a little while ago about the Beach Boys and Brian, especially Brian Wilson, quite a bit about him. I don't remember the name of it. But anyways, they were in the recording studio and they had the string instruments and quite a few, I don't think you call it an orchestra, but a number of them, and some other instruments, and they were playing one of his more popular songs, God Only Knows, I think. And the violinist stopped and says, my music is all written in the key of A, and everybody else is in the key of G. It's something like this, I'm kind of close. And I remember his answer was, well, I don't know, it just sounds right. Just play it. And I thought that was pretty neat because sometimes we can't really explain why we're putting in a stroke down, and we don't really have to explain it. All right? It just seems like I want a dark here. Okay, you can see the harmonious colors now that are coming together here because I allowed them to run together. And you can see that my colors are keeping fairly intense because there's no earth colors in here. Now, these figures are just little gestures, and if I were to do them so that they were more realistic, it would be totally out of the context of the painting. This is gestural, suggestive up in here, then do the same for your figures.
And you're putting them in with a pretty big brush.
Yeah, I've got a nice tip on this one. It's brand new, so I can do a lot of detail with it.
Eric, how long do you use a brush?
Before I change it out,
Mhm.
you know, I don't, quite a while, a number of years, I just don't know.
It just starts not feeling right.
Yeah, yeah, or else that, and it still works. I mean, I've got one, no, I didn't bring it, but they're kind of worn out. But then I start saying, you know, why not get a new brush? You know, why am I saving it? So, but it is a number of years, and I splay them out and all that kind of thing. Okay, so this is my area of dominance. I'm going to start to show a little more detail in here. So now I'm starting to pick out these little pieces in between. All right, so this is all painted flat for the most part, but now I'm starting to give form in my area of dominance, which means detail, or I start to show, you know, I start to show that it turns. You know, you might have, well, here, there's a knot in the tree up in here. Okay, and maybe down in here. Okay, so this is where we're starting to show form. Okay, it's light to shadow. But over here, it's very flat because that's not really my area of dominance. Okay, so we're on the. This is the. We're getting onto the last lap of this painting, and I've told some of my students that you do a good job on your painting for the most part. It's like you're running a race, a mile race, and you are on the. You did a really good job. You're coming in first. It's a really nice race that you've run. And it's like you come into the finish line and you're waving to the cheerleaders and you go around another lap. You just don't stop. You just keep going and the race is over. And that's what we gotta realize in our paintings here too.
The celebration lap.
The celebration, yeah, the celebration lap, that's a good way to say that. I can say, you know, the celebration lap you really don't need here. It's, you're overworking your painting. So there's a guy by the name of Stan Miller over in Spokane, okay? And he does the extreme opposite of painting than I do. Very, very detailed, photographic. And I went over there, was over there teaching. His students said, "Why do you paint like this?" And Eric Wiegardt paints like this. And he says, "It's different." he said he is a novelist, and he referred to me as a poet.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's just two different, and he'll spend like, I would guess, a week on a painting or so.
He posted one online the other day that was, he does magnificent portraits.
Yeah, very, very.
And very detailed. Takes them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I started taking from him.
Yeah, fine guy.
Yeah.
I don't understand how he can do that, stay with focus for that long. But I don't think he can understand how I can see these big relationships and get it down real fast. And I'm assuming maybe he can. Maybe he's done this before and he's bored with it. I don't know. But if you guys know John Salmonen's work,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
all right, very that same kind of work, very detailed. And I was doing a demonstration in Wisconsin for the Transparent Watercolor Society, and that was a very interesting demonstration because I was the judge for that show, and it was kind of a big hoopla thing. Then I gave the presentation that night, and usually the audience are students, kind of like you guys. I mean, they're learning to paint. You're kind of getting up and going. But as I looked out on the audience, oh my goodness, John Salmonen was there watching me. Chen Chi came to watch. The guy that owns the big brush supply area. You guys, if I said his name.
Cheap
Joe. Blake?
Not Cheap Joe. It's no. And then I think Kelly Kane might have been there, also from Watercolor magazine. I thought, oh, this is uncomfortable. What am I going to do? What can I do to entertain these guys? These guys have got it all. In fact, I'm wondering how they paint their paintings. So it was a street scene, and I thought, well, I'll just try to do the best I can here. And so I took there's a big building in the back in the street, and I took a big wash of color, and I just went across the whole paper, because it was all midtones. You could do that, and I thought, at least I can get myself kind of, into the zone and entertain. And I said, this is the way that John Salmon starts a painting, which is absolutely opposite. I mean, he's very, very detailed. And everybody laughed, and John Salmon turned to Chen Chi, and I think he said, that would take me a week to get to that. But it broke the tension so that I could paint. Whew, I've been doing a lot of talking this morning. Okay, you can see how the whites have kind of worked their way in here a little bit.
Great job with that.
Yeah, and I've just had fun developing the patterns as I've gone. I didn't really have my value study, and I'd let the painting kind of develop itself. Now let's drive you a little bit more towards this area down here, because I'm going to blot out just a few of these, not all of them. So it drives my lighter lights into this area. One of the assignments we had in art school was to paint from life, an oil painting, which that's nothing big. But they put everything on that table, the tablecloth, everything else was a white object. No color at all. White tablecloth, white vase, white little figurine, white this, white that. Everything was white. And then they said, now paint this in full color. and guys with more skilled art students could do it in full color, and yet still look like white objects. They weren't changing the color sense at all. But they were capturing little nuances of color. Okay, guys, I think.
Did you use blue?
in my
In
that-
your white painting?
Yeah, use all colors.
Mhm.
Red, yeah. Red, yellow, and blue. And it still looked like white. It still looked like a white object. White objects.